A whole bunch of moving parts in the Michigan case reported yesterday. As a general rule, I don't particularly like going at other members of the media for a variety of reasons that we may or may not get into today, but we don't do a whole ton of it here at this show. But this latest on Michigan, I've been pretty measured in my approach to this an experience has told me I should be. And Gator, you've been pretty measured as well. And I think you're for a lot of the same reasons. But, I was told some things by Michigan sources that I'm like, I don't want to go with that until there's independent verification. Because, you want to make sure that what you're being told is accurate. And, I didn't want to rush to judgment, report something that could later be proven wrong. And one thing I was told that there was not evidence linking Jim Harbaugh to Connor Stalions. And I'm like, okay, that's a Michigan position and I understand that, but I thought it was really important to get independent verification of that. And yesterday, Yahoo reported that at this time, it's true that the NCAA findings that they shared with the Big Ten, and when they took computers and they took phones, and that their sourcing and Yahoo's sourcing isn't just Michigan, it's beyond Michigan, that there wasn't a tie between Jim Harbaugh and Connor Stalions. There was no evidence proving that. Now, things can change, but that's the way it stands right now. So the Big Ten has been given this information by the NCAA. And so what is the Big Ten going to do with it? It doesn't sound like they're going to do anything. It doesn't going to change the position on anything. And that doesn't mean necessarily the Michigan and Jim Harbaugh's out of the clear, because they still have to account for what Stalions was doing and him being there. But one of the reasons I don't rush to a position is because I don't really want to damage or spread rumors that something that you think might be true or that you really want to be true. And when you commit to these positions of, oh, they're cheating, oh, this is dirty and this is rotten, or they are clean, and you're adamant about it, you kind of are locked into that position. And if that position turns out to not be a strong one, in the media, you have to make a decision. Do you walk it back? Do you walk it back fully? Or do you stay locked in to that position? And then you get into the you can't tell me crowd. You get into the, oh, yeah, I know that's what the ruling is, but you can't tell me. Okay, I mean, I understand that that's going to be some people's beliefs, but when you think about if it was ever your school, and I go back to the Curtis Blackwell accusations against Mark D'Antonio. When that came out, we said, well, let's wait and see. And he had a wrongful termination case. And when that judge ruled and dismissed the case, there was, I know there was Michigan fans saying, oh, you can't tell me that what Blackwell said isn't true. Or you can't tell me that they didn't record practices, which is of other opponents, which Blackwell said. But if you operate that way, then it's a complete dismissal of authority. And the cynicism runs, I guess, too deep for me to be like that. And as of now, they say there's no tie. And they have Michigan's phones, they have computers. Could that change? Sure. But right now, it's the most concrete thing that's been reported, and it came from Dan Wetzel and Ross Dellinger in a Yahoo story yesterday. So then there's those national media members that have totally linked Harbaugh to this as being a scheme orchestrated by him and illegally stealing signs. Will they walk it back? Or are they too far down that road? Have they committed to their positions? And, if we're going with the information that's available now, who cite what the NCAA told the Big Ten, that information from Yahoo, I wonder if it's going to get reported. Because you know who hasn't reported it today? Since it came out 12 hours ago? Pete Thamel. Hasn't tweeted about that at all. He hasn't mentioned it. This morning on Get Up, Paul Feinbaum and Heather Dinich didn't mention it at all. They didn't bring it up. And it's coming from a pretty credible reporter on this case. Now, a new report came out yesterday from the Associated Press saying multiple Big Ten schools colluded and shared Michigan signs with each other, which I would imagine would fall under the Big Ten sportsmanship policy, which I've printed out and read. And that, do you think it's sportsmanlike for two schools to collude and to share the signs and give them to a third school who's about to play that opponent? And then they have their signs and they go into the game with those signs? Are those coaches now on-site scouting for other teams? Now, again, that story is just starting. I don't know where it's going to lead. I suspect there is more information that's going to come out on that. And that story was reported over 12 hours ago by Larry Lage of the Associated Press. Pete Thamel hasn't retweeted it.
Well,
Pete Thamel hasn't reported it. Paul Feinbaum didn't say anything about it this morning. Heather Dinich didn't say anything about it this morning. And so Tony Petitti, who is mulling all this over and what to do, is he going to put the same scrutiny on those schools for violating the sportsmanship policy? Or is he just going to let that go? Is he just going to let that go? And Michigan still has to answer to Connor Stalions being there, okay? His actions as a support staff member, that doesn't change. But what we said all along is that it's a minimal ask to be treated like everybody else. And I am growing increasingly suspicious of some national media members who are screaming from the mountaintops about one part of the story, but now have apparently completely ignored another part of the story. So we'll watch and see what else comes out of this. But Gator, I don't like doing this, but I find it to be awfully curious.
Well, I'm not sure exactly what Pete Thamel said to set you off like that. The AP story that came out last night, I don't want to put a whole lot of stock into stories until, if you've got a name associated with it, great. But Larry Lage wrote the story didn't. He just said some person wanted to remain anonymous because he was worried about his coaching career. So, until you come forward and go on the record, it's just, rumor and a report, I guess, at this point, which, you could also say that's how this whole thing started with a private investigation firm. But it wasn't long after that things started to get corroborated. And all right, so I think the same thing has to happen here. Wait till this gets corroborated with a little bit of an investigation, or if there's any kind of evidence that comes out other than just, somebody's anonymous testimony that's coming to a reporter.
Well, the anonymous testimony has gone a long way towards damning Michigan. It's gone a long way towards damning Michigan. And I agree with you. I don't think that those anonymous sources should really be used. And like a lot of Michigan fans are really upset at Ryan Walters. And I'm like, he's the first coach that went on the record. Okay. Everybody else has done it. Oh, this is what I'm hearing. That's what I'm hearing. And nobody, and it's being run with by Thamel and others. And so I actually agree with you. But when I say treated like everybody else, those anonymous sources that damned Michigan, are they now saying, well, they're just anonymous sources and it's so now we're not going to use them? And I also agree with you that the story gets a lot different when names get associated with it. And, drip, 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 because the drip, drip, drip has been Chinese water torture for Michigan fans, okay? And understanding that some of this obviously is justified. But there's so many accusations out there and so much out there that some of it may not be true, okay? Some of it may not be true. And I know that the you can't tell me crowd, the you can't tell me crowd. When it's their school or your school that's under scrutiny, and if the NCAA findings that they've handed over to the Big Ten and they say, well, there's no tie between Harbaugh and Connor Stalions, we cannot prove that at this point. And yet the Big Ten might go ahead with a suspension?
Well, at the same time, there's a story. I'm looking at Pete Thamel's Twitter account. And
has he updated it? Has he tweeted anything yet?
No, but he also didn't tweet about the NCAA coming out and saying there's no known connection between Ryan Day's family and the private investigation.
Which I'm going to go with, by the way. I'm if that's what is out there right now, then I'm going to go with that. And I'm not going to say you can't tell me.
So my point is, he hasn't reported on either of those.
Well, he reported yesterday about the Central Michigan part of the story. He reported yesterday about the Big Ten getting ready to levy a suspension against Michigan.
Yes.
He's retweeted
I understand,
all
but
kinds of stuff
Right.
the moment it comes out. This one that's come out, crickets.
Well, same thing with the NCAA story with the Ryan Day thing. That's also crickets. So
Okay.
I'm just saying the last thing, that was 20 hours ago, he retweeted the Central Michigan story.
And go ahead and retweet that too. Go ahead and retweet that
So
too.
I guess I would, wait 3, 2, 1 for him to tweet something
Well, I
else
hope
about
so.
this stuff later on today. But I haven't been following Thamel closely enough to see what he's, said about Harbaugh and his association. Now, the one thing that is interesting with Harbaugh is how much if there's no evidence that links him, does that exonerate him from blame or suspension or punishment, or does it exonerate him from blame, suspension, or punishment further than what it normally would be? Because he's still the head football coach of the program, and it still falls underneath his umbrella, and they still have a laundry list of things that have happened in the last 15 months while he's been the head coach. And this is another investigation a second investigation by the NCAA.
All of it should be investigated.
And it is being
investigated. And in the case
investigated.
of Jim Harbaugh, Connor Stalions' actions in Michigan football needs to answer to those, and none of this changes any of that.
Right.
Okay, I'm being clear on that.
All I'm saying is that because they haven't made any connection yet to Harbaugh, maybe they never will. The difference between if they were to make a connection and if they weren't, maybe the harshness of whatever punishment's coming down the pike. Harbaugh is likely to still face some sort of punishment because he's the head coach of the program.
Yep. And all the time and effort that's been put into Michigan and their illegally obtaining signs, I hope the same time and effort is put into the schools that are being accused of illegally obtaining signs before they play Michigan. And I'm not sure that's going to happen, but the minimum ask that anybody would ask of any school and their fan base would be to be treated the same as everybody else. And the full-throated yelling that's taken place, and Michigan's gone through an absolute PR ringer with everybody yelling, I'm wondering if it's going to go the other way. And I wonder if Tony Petitti's going to react to it.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it feels like this is something that schools go through, and it's just Michigan's time that they're going through it.
From
a national perspective.
I get that too.
Obviously, we have examples from all over the place.
But let's see what this story unveils.